Well, my watch just turned to 5 o'clock,
Okay.
so I guess I'll call the meeting accommodating a change of time. It allows Amy to get off to a program that she needs to be an integral part of. This meeting is being recorded. Everybody should know that they are being recorded. And I have to read you, hopefully for the last time for the rest of my life, a notice that this is an open meeting being conducted via remote participation. There are no members gathering physically. Members of the public may attend this meeting virtually by accessing the Zoom link that was published in the meeting notice. And a recording of this meeting will be posted on the city's website as soon as we're able to do so after the meeting. We will take any votes by roll call, as is the rule, even though that rule, I guess, is now suspended or retired with the lifting of the COVID rules. But nonetheless, that's what we'll do for the last time in this meeting. So just looking to see who's present. I see Mr. Pierce is here. I see Mrs. Mangiarotti, Mrs. Gould, Mr. Reed, Mrs. Svensson, Mrs. Lusk, Mrs. Lawrence, and myself. And I expect that we will see Mahesh. I certainly hope we do, because he's up pretty soon. Do we have any staff members who are guests or anticipated to be?
We don't, and I was told that nobody had signed up. They sign up ahead of time to come to these, and nobody had signed up for today. So I'll be sure to share the recording of the meeting with everyone once it's up on the YouTube page.
Very good. Thank you. All right, so the next item or first item on the agenda is to review the minutes. I hope you've all had a chance to look them over. I'll give you all a minute or so to scan over your notes and take a quick look if you need to. And we'll come back at you. Would anybody like any more time to look at the minutes? If so, put your hand up. Or Toby, you're muted, but give a holler if you want more time.
I'm fine, thank you, Charlie.
Okay. All right. Are there any edits or changes or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, hearing none, I will assume that the minutes are accepted as presented, and we will move on to, we'll have to put off the treasurer's report until we see the treasurer. So we'll move on to the director's report. And I'm going to ask Amy maybe to skip ahead to a couple of things that we have under new business, just so that if we're getting in the later hours and she has to drop out, she'll be able to do so, and we will have covered those points. So Amy, take it away.
You're muted.
Thank you. You've read the report. I'll bring a special attention to the long range plan. I did just today receive results of the surveys that we did get in. They are not surprisingly in alignment with what our priorities are currently, to serve the community, to upgrade technology, to continue outreach. The reports that how the results are downloaded from SurveyMonkey are awkward. And so once I clean those up, I will send it out to you. You don't need 182 responses to the zip code question. But there's a lot of good graphs and pie charts in there, and also text of some of the the open comment boxes. So you'll all receive those. We're hoping to set up a meeting next week among the staff who are on the long range planning committee, and I'll send out an email to all of you as well if anybody wants to join us. Well, I'll update you to the AC when it's quite warm in the building right now, so you don't want to come to meetings. But so once we evaluate the answers, the responses that we got, we'll start writing the plan itself. I may be reaching out to some folks. We only got 5 responses from community organizations, which we were expecting a small response, but we hoped it would be a little bit bigger than that. So we're going to put our heads together and think about which organizations we really want to hear from and figure out who has connections to somebody in those organizations. So maybe we can make some phone calls and likely be asking you guys, some of the friends, to make some phone calls to get some responses from organizations to kind of round out the responses. And let's see, Charlie, was there anything, what in particular, the long range plan, the farmers market? I sent an email about, we've been invited to come to a farmers market. The whole new board of trustees over there, I'm not sure who they all are. I did let them know that we were going to try to get some people together to do a July date. Once I get confirmation that we're a go, we'll be looking for people to do that. It's generally 9 to 1. You only need 2 or 3 people to be there at a time, so you can do an hour, whatever people have available. And Crystal, it's her Saturday on. We generally have 1 Saturday a month in the summer. It's her Saturday on. And so she has offered to come over and do a story time or some sort of kids activity on that Saturday. But again, just waiting for approval from the farmers market folks. And then also with the celebration for the library opening, something Charlie and I discussed, that we do want to have a big celebration. We don't know when that will be. We'll get to that when we do the building update. The date seems to be moving around quite a bit now that we are over 70% complete. But that last 30% is a little, we're not sure how long it's going to take. And I will say, just before I left the library today, I heard from our site supervisor that the latest info on the windows is that the new windows that they're waiting on are scheduled to be delivered August 9th. So it'll definitely be a few weeks after that. So we're really definitely pushing into the fall.
Okay, any questions for Amy?
I had one question about the budget.
Mm-hmm.
It says here that tomorrow's hearing is virtual. So are we going to get links to that? Okay.
Yes, there's so what's going to happen, I checked, Jay Delicio is the chair of that committee. They're televised on Facebook Live. If you're on, you go to the AACS Facebook page, they've been broadcasting the hearings. And what I noticed is that they were only having a department head come on the screen. And so I reached out to Jay Delicio, who's the chair of that, and he said, other folks are welcome to come, but it is unlikely they will be able to speak. So I was telling Charlie earlier that I will send out the link to the Zoom meeting, and I think it would be important if you sign on to the Zoom, make sure you include the word library in your name, because they may not know who you are. it would be Cindy Library. And so they will make note, like, for instance, the fire chief had his assistant chief with him. And so they made note that there were observers or other interested parties, but you didn't see him on screen and he didn't talk. So I do think if you're able, definitely use the link and sign in. But no big expectations. You'll mostly be watching them ask questions. I did bring up the fact that those of you who have done this before, typically the director and the budget administrator sit at a table in front of the council. And you're given a few minutes to talk about your department, and then they just ask you questions about the various line items that they have. We're not prepped ahead of time for that. But then at the end, and Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, at the end they ask if somebody would like to speak, and typically Charlie will come up and tell them how awesome the library is and how we need more staff and we need better technology. And so I did when the budget administrator, Jeremy, when he called me to go over the hearing on Tuesday, I did let him know that's an important part of the process for us. And we did talk about staffing levels, and he did give me some suggestions as to how to go about fighting for that or discussing that. It won't happen this coming fiscal year, but for next fiscal year. So he's well aware what we need and what we're looking for, but it does not hurt to hear it from you guys as well. I have all their email addresses.
Yeah, I would simply say that we haven't immersed you in the municipal side of our budget for a number of years, and it's something that we really should be doing. So I think what's most important is if anybody wants to observe the process, that's fine. It's probably going to take 15, maybe 20 minutes at most. There's going to be limited opportunity for anybody to say anything. If I were to speak, I would simply say, look, we're renovating this building. We are still short staff because of the fact that we do not have enough staff. We cannot stay open for the minimum number of service hours in order to receive a full allotment of state aid. So that's not an insignificant haircut that we receive on our state aid every year. So typically, or in the last several years, what I've tried to do is just remind them of that, that we are down in staff and we need to replenish that at some point. The other item which gets a little into the weeds here is that the budget director is suggesting that we take our new data processing costs of our fiber optic cable hookup, fits nicely within our budget in a level funded budget. Nonetheless, the budget director is suggesting that we use some available federal funds to pay that for the coming year, which would be great. If that's available to us, we should do that. But I want to remind people that we at least need a placeholder for that expense next year when we don't have the federal funds available, so that somehow it doesn't fall off the table. So those are my only concerns. I think a good tactic for all of us for this year is I can share the municipal budget with you. You can have a look at it. You can listen to the process. Don't expect that you need to speak. And then when it comes around next year, we will have had a couple of months to hash it over at the board level and take it from there. But it, from what Amy and I put together, mostly Amy, it doesn't look like we have any resistance whatsoever, other than if we wanted to add more staff, which we always do. So I give you the option. If Amy sends out that link, feel free to join. Don't feel you have to. Next time around, next early spring, we'll have a good conversation. But we've kind of lost track of that. There are a few things that, like evaluating the director, things that have fallen by the wayside for reasons I can't explain to you, that haven't been done for a number of years, that really are things that should fall under our jurisdiction, or at least in our field of view somewhere. So that's where we are. Any questions on the budget process? Okay. So, any more questions for Amy? All right. I'm going to go back. I don't know what the story is with Mahesh, but I'm going to go back now. Oh no, I take that back. I'm going to carry on. I was going to give you an update on the building project and the tech lab. What's happening right now in the building, the biggest project will be the removal of the skylight, which I believe requires a big crane to come in on Friday and pick up this massive skylight that sits over the atrium. That will come out. It will be immediately decked over with plywood and weatherproofing. And then sometime next week, that'll all come off and a brand new skylight will be installed in its place. So that's happening. That certainly will be disruptive to what's going on in the library at the moment. But the next thing would be the elevator. We know that that's out of commission for a while. It's like a 9-week project altogether. So far, it looks like it's on plan, and I don't see that there are any unusual delays that are anticipated with completing that. Looks like they're going to be ripping out the ceiling on the first floor this week. Amy, has that started yet?
It looks more like it's going to happen next week because they've got so much prep to do for the skylight on Friday. Because
Okay.
they have to do that they have to do that ceiling work on Thursday mornings when we're not there because it's so disruptive to staff. I mean, that first floor lobby is the heart of well, our staff is the checkout desks. So they have to do that while we're not there.
Okay. All right. And we talked about the, I guess the children's room is going to be a priority with that because staff is going to need some space in there as quick as they can get it. In the words of Sergey, the head man for the primary construction company, says going to be tight. So, but we keep leaning on them that staff is getting moved around a lot. It's got to be carefully choreographed, but we've got to make accommodating them as big a priority as we possibly can. So that's happening. Replacement windows we talked about. This is really you've probably been hearing lately a lot about how supplies of goods and services, goods primarily, manufactured goods are short all over the economy. And I think we're very fortunate that this is really the first time that this monster has reared its head. But it's the replacement window process is really, I think, set back mostly by a delay in being able to get the materials that the manufacturer needs. So this could push back, as Amy said, into September sometime. We're hoping that that's the only thing that happens like that, but that's where we are. There's still no air conditioning in the building. It's hot in there. It's especially hot on the 4th floor where Amy works because heat rises. And so commissioning, we keep hearing it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. The latest I hear is next week. And we're trying to make that happen. So understand that people are working with fans and without air conditioning, and it's rugged at the moment, especially in a heat wave. There's been a lot of priority given to really fixing up the marble room as kind of the showpiece of the historic part of the building. They got what was called an "oh my God" price from the from the person who was going to do the painting and filling in the cracks and so forth. So that may get set back a little bit as they rebid that locally, and hopefully it won't put a delay into the completion of the work. We've tried to dovetail the technology project with the renovation project, and that has been really going very well. There's been good cooperation and a lot of leadership from the project manager of the building renovation. And the Municipal Building Commission has approved some expenses. There were some things that the tech project needed, electrical hookups, and installations, access to wiring, and so forth. And there were some costs involved in doing that. And then since there was room in the budget of the renovation project, the Municipal Building Commission approved those additional expenses, which is great. So these things are really dovetailing beautifully. As far as the tech lab itself is concerned, the wiring and the construction are pretty well along in the process. A lot of it is complete. The fiber optic cable has been hooked up. It's not been commissioned yet. Things are proceeding very smoothly. I don't anticipate that we're going to see any delays there. We did receive our formal notice from the feds about our E-rate approval. And we're going to have a meeting next week, just our tech committee, which consists primarily of Carrie and Amy and myself and Jack Baptist, who is our volunteer kind of project manager, really, from the library side of the coin. He and Carrie. Jack Baptist, I probably described to you before, is just retired from Sensata. He was he was a network engineer at some pretty high level, and he's got just exactly the right credentials that we need for this job. So he's watching it like a hawk. He's interacting with the vendors, and it's a good thing. So kudos to him. We'll let you know after we meet next week if we see any snags on the horizon, but it's really going very, very well. Any questions on either of those projects? Good. Okay. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. I'm going to put both those items, the filtering and the bylaws, on the table once again until hopefully our September meeting, at which point we should have more information on both of those. So is there any other unfinished business that we need to talk about that anybody has on their minds? Okay, I'll take that as a no. And we'll move ahead to new business. No, I keep skipping the treasurer's report. We really have to do this. We have to approve this warrant. So I'm going to go back to the treasurer's report. You see warrant number 12, which is not really our final warrant of the year. Usually in July, we have another warrant as kind of a catch up for all the spending that happens at the end of June to meet our fiscal year budget. But this one, you see a warrant total of $3,110. Any questions on any of the items on this warrant?
I did just go over the invoices for this list right before leaving the library today. So if you do have questions.
I have a question on line 13.
Yep.
Data Axle. I know it's some kind of a reference by the account code. Can you tell me what that is?
Yep, it's the city directory.
Oh, okay. Make a note of that.
Amy, I was just curious, what the number of Amazon purchases I noticed. I was just curious generally what the library uses Amazon for.
For so much. A lot of these are summer reading things. The smaller ones are supplies for like the take and make kits. We buy items for the collection through Amazon. We buy library supplies through Amazon. Because we don't have a library credit card, it just makes it so much, we have an Amazon account. It just is so much easier to order that way. But in that first block, there's one larger amount that's $248.09. That's a big whiteboard easel stand on wheels that Crystal will be using when she does her outdoor story times.
Got it.
This summer, there's another larger one, $111.36. That's games and prizes, candy, things like that for the young adult summer reading program. You'll see there's a few, there's one for Crystal and one for Elise. Reimbursement expenses, same things, but sometimes it's easier to just go to the dollar store. Like one of them is literally a whole long list of pool noodles. It's just easier to go that and get reimbursed that way. And they come up on different invoices because of the way they get shipped and whatnot.
So it's mostly library supplies, not necessarily books, it sounds like.
Right. So the things like, we just bought a bunch of flash drives as staff are going from one computer to the next and not linked on the network. So it's just easier and cheaper to order them through Amazon. Although, so Melissa Letelier is the sort of chief orderer for library supplies, and she's amazing. Like think of your most couponing, will travel to get the best deal. Like she knows between Culls and WB Mason, like who has the best deal, who we get she watches the monthly flyers. Like she's good.
Got it. Yeah, thanks. I was just curious.
Yep.
Digital Commonwealth, what does that amount to? $200 on line 14. What is that purpose of that?
That's another reference item that I could not tell a lot from the invoice that I saw, but I believe that it has to do with the digitization stuff, like that's part of the sales network, but I certainly can get more information from Carrie on that.
Okay, I noticed that's A3 is the Gibson Fund, one of our endowments, which is the purpose of that fund is history and genealogy, local history and genealogy, I believe. Yeah. So it is something in that realm, but we don't know.
And I know that Carrie did a lot of spending down gifts this month. Okay.
So if you see in the account column, if it says F as the code, that means we're spending on that item from funds that have been donated. And in the second column from the right, you'll see the name of the little fund out of which we drew those funds. Typically on a warrant for newer trustees, there'll be a section on the bottom which is revenues, and we typically will receive money in donations at the counter or through the reference department from random patrons who give for whatever purpose they have in mind. And we usually flag those. If there is a significant amount for a specific purpose, we'll flag it with the person's name. And then we'll try methodically to spend that down for the right purposes. So when you see someone's name in that second column from the right, that's what that's all about. And code F means we're spending gifted money. And typically, if we have that kind of revenue coming in a given month, which we haven't for several months since we're not open, we have to vote that. We have to vote to accept the donations. So it's a process we haven't had to do for a few months here. Anyway, any other questions on the warrant? All right. I am going to take it on myself to transfer the amount of $3,110.13, the amount of warrant 12, out of Rockland Trust and into our checking account, which is our usual process. So usually each month we'll draw against our endowment funds, which we budget for. And we'll put that money from the endowments into the checking account to pay our bills. At the end of the year, in December, at the end of the calendar year, we'll take a look at that and see if we were holding any excess cash. If we have a slug of cash in there that we need to spend down, then maybe for that particular month, we won't transfer the warrant funds out of the endowments. But that's our typical process is we take the warrant amount and we move that money from endowments into the operating checking account. Okay. I'm going to put that out there as a vote to accept the treasurer's report as presented in warrant number 12. Is there any discussion? All right, and I will call your name and let me know if you approve. Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mrs. Mangiarotti,
Yes.
Mrs. Gould,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mrs. Svensson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lusk,
Yes.
Mrs. Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So the treasurer's report is approved. I'm sorry I don't have the checking account balance, but we'll catch up at some point. Now, back to new business. The Personnel Committee of Beth Gould, Diane Mangiarotti, and Judy Lusk put together a personnel review, which they have circulated to you, which they've also discussed with Amy for a give and take on its content and its process. You were asked to look it over and raise any questions that you had. Got plenty of time to adopt this since we don't need to use it until next, February, I believe it is, your anniversary date, Amy.
Or the end of the fiscal year, wouldn't it be?
Well, that's a good question. We'll have to have a definite answer on that. But anyway, we don't need it, approved at this.
Yeah, that's what it said in the top line, but we can change it, I suppose.
Okay, good point. So do we have any questions? Diane, do you want to address the process by which we'll do this?
The process we used, or what are you asking me?
The review process involving Amy and the board.
Well, we thought that you would all receive copies of this if we approve it, and that towards the end, but I thought it was going to be the fiscal year, so that would be like a year from now or May. You would all have the opportunity to review how you viewed Amy's job performance, and you would probably, we're thinking of having you submit it, and Charlie, you would get copies of all of them, and then you would have to kind of come up with whether like an average for each, whether you give her a 1 or 2 or a 3 on each of the categories. And then we haven't really discussed that, how that would work, whether you would want a small committee to go over it with you, or whether you, Charlie, would like to take that on yourself to report to Amy how she did and our evaluations.
Okay, well, I think Amy would also be receiving a copy of this document and would fill it out on her own. And then we have a meeting of the minds. We talked about that being a process with the director and the president of the board, subsequent to receiving input from other board members. And then we have a give and take. We come to an agreement on each individual point between Amy and myself, and I can report back to the board if need be. But that's the process we envision at this point. Anybody have any questions on the process, the document? Amy, are you good with this?
I am. I like the process.
I do have a question about the process. For example, in number 1, if Amy doesn't let us know or give us some evidence before we attempt to look at this, for instance, the third bullet, the reports, whether this is just an example, whether that report has been submitted or not, there's no way that we could know anything about that unless she gave us some information in that evidence box before we attempted to complete this. So that's my struggle. It's just a little struggle I have. But there may be things that we need information ahead of time and not just by listening at every single meeting and taking that information and being responsible for remembering all of that. And you may mention that, I don't know. And so I think that's my struggle, right, with that.
I also think that we should all have copies. Well, if we approve this one, we would all have copies of it. Have it with you along with all your other board materials. And it's something to remind you of what we're all looking for. And Amy knows what we're looking for. And I would think that way you could kind of keep some sort of notes to yourself about, well, this worked well, or this, I haven't heard anything about this. I don't know, really, like what Judy just brought up. I don't know this information, and this is our first time doing this. So I don't know whether we'd say, Amy, what about this?
Well, an example might be 1A, the ARIS report and the state aid report. Those are things that have to get filed that you wouldn't normally see ahead of time, but I would have to see them because I have to sign them for the president, I should say, not Charlie. So the president has to sign them. So I think anything like that, my opinion is that becomes, as the president assimilates all this data, that any input that the board has, as I assimilate all of that, it becomes the president's job to look for those particular items like the ARIS report or the state aid report. I'll make sure that they get done, in other words. That's the president's job. But you certainly see an awful lot of stuff here that you can weigh in on if you choose to.
I'm just wondering, in all your research, the committee, did you talk to anybody about how they do this? Is it just something that's distributed, or is there a discussion that takes place before people fill out the forms? Or did you find any other libraries and how they do it?
We didn't talk to anybody about how they do it. We were trying to find a model, for our library, what would fit for here. And really, that's something that was left out of the discussion. Maybe we need to go back to the drawing board on that and meet again, but that's why we brought it up. What we do have in front of you all tonight, and maybe some suggestions can be given about what we should be doing next. But I guess all I envisioned was my experience with evaluating. We would be given an evaluation form and fill it out, and then it would go to the person in charge, and then they would discuss it with the person being evaluated. So I guess that was my experience, but that was on another board. So I don't know.
I think the Massachusetts library system has things, different types of things that deal with this. That might be something to look at.
Yeah.
Before we go ahead.
I'm sure they do.
We did, or the committee did look at the MBLC as far as models for this document. As far as the process is concerned, I know you didn't look in that direction, but again, we have time to do that. That's a good point. Make sure that the process we envision is we'll see what other people are doing, in other words. So good idea. We'll see that gets done. But any Any comments on the substance of this document and the contents of it?
To quickly address Judy's comment about like, how will you guys know? I think that for me, having this document is a good sort of checklist. It gives me structure on how to do my reports to you guys to make sure that I'm, often the last few months, it's just been like, what's been going on? What are the biggest things happening in the library right now? If I were a board member, what would I want to know about the library right now? That's really how I've been doing my reports based on what's been before. So this gives it a little more structure. So I'm looking forward to that.
Good. That's good.
And I just want to thank Judy for, she went through many variations typing all this up and doing the document and getting it to us. So I just want to thank her for doing that, being our scribe.
Oh, and I want to also second that because her Google Docs were, I had never worked with that before. So it was, I go, what do I do with this? How do I even, so it was a new experience for me, and we're very lucky that we had her on the committee to do all that.
My pleasure, really.
I echo that. I know you all did a good, thorough job. I attended several meetings, not all of them, but I know how hard you worked, so it's much appreciated. Okay, well, I think it's safe to say that if we don't have any questions or comments on this, that we can adopt this as our format for the year to come. And we'll put it into practice. And if there are things that we feel we need to change going forward, we'll take that up at a future board meeting. In the meantime, we'll charge the committee with making contact with some libraries that follow a similar process and see where we might refine our actual procedures going forward. Does that sound like the right conclusion?
Yes, we'll look into that.
Okay.
We'll have to meet again.
All right, Amy, we don't see, you're gonna have to bail out in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I have to
Well-
bail out, but Charlie, I've made you the host, so you're in capable hands.
Okay,
I'm going to leave and you guys can continue on. Thank you so much. And honestly, reach out if you have any questions or concerns or want to know exactly how warm it is in the building at any one particular time. Good night, all. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Night.
yeah, it has been hot. They've been putting up with a lot, and we need to be really mindful of that. I don't know how we can thank the staff for all they're going through, but we need to think of a way. All right, under new business, we've talked about the long range plan. That's another thing, like the municipal budget and the personnel review, that are things that we should perhaps have been doing right along, and it's going to be built into our agenda going forward in the new fiscal year. New ways of thinking, or revamping old ways of thinking that somehow were lost by the wayside. We talked about the farmers market. We talked about the fact that we should have a celebration. If you read that article that George Rhodes wrote in the Sun Chronicle in, 2 or 3 Sundays ago, I forget exactly when it was, he really put the pressure on us to have a bang-up celebration, and of course we should. The first question is when. One of the things that gets in the way is that September is the kickoff to the big read and all the programs that follow in succession over the next 6 weeks or so after that kicks off. So we don't want to disrupt that process. The other thing, of course, is we're not sure exactly when everything's going to be finished. It'll, I think, be essentially done, other than popping windows in and out. I hope that's all it amounts to, into September. But just, think about what would be a worthy form of celebration. Amy has reached out to several other stakeholders like the Friends, for example. We certainly want to involve the building commission and the mayor in the process. We want to involve the project manager and some of the key people who are actually doing the work. And I think, we should do it upright. We should spend some money, and we'll have money to spend. I will can convince you of that. I think we're going to, when we approve the trust fund budget in September, you'll see a line item in there that we'll have to approve to spend some money on a celebration. But I think the Friends will also want to kick in some money. Anyway, think about that. Anybody want to discuss that at the moment, or?
Well, I think it should happen at least a month or two later after we've been open, so that you have a chance to work out any issues with the building. If you don't want to open it and have a celebration the next week or the next few weeks after, I think it should be, give some time in between. And I don't know if any of you were at the last one, but we had a speaker who was from the library, and he just died recently. The gentleman who spoke, he was very famous. I forgot. I had the article. Gregorian, and he gave a speech, and we had a lot of different speakers, and then food and people. So anyway, we'll have to sit down and think about that. But I'm just warning, thinking that we should not rush into right away as soon as it opens, just in case we have any issues.
Are you suggesting, Diane, that we should make sure the elevator is in fact working?
You just don't know. You know how you think everything is all ready to go, and then you have some issues. So you don't want to have that. That would be very embarrassing.
Yeah,
Good
things
wisdom in
weren't
that.
the way you wanted them. But
you've got that, and hopefully COVID is all behind us, but you never know if we're going to have something flare up again. So there's a lot to think about. But anyway, we're just starting to get going, putting out feelers with stakeholders in this process, and there'll be more to say prior to the September board meeting for sure. So there'll be some emails flying back and forth before then.
Charlie,
Go ahead.
do the bylaw. Is that
No.
not ready to be discussed?
It's not ready to be discussed, but it will be in September.
Okay.
I actually wanted to clear the deck really for Amy so she could get on to her
Okay.
program tonight. And I thought that we'll just table it for now. So I didn't prepare it, but
All right.
we'll have it ready for
All right.
September. Okay, and we talked about the budget hearing. So is there any other item of new business that anyone would like to bring up?
When will we know about the date, since this is our last meeting, for the farmer's market, if you want? It's just open right now to July, so.
Right. So as soon as Amy has heard back from their board with a date, we'll circulate that to everybody and ask for a few volunteers.
All right.
So that's underway. We'll be in touch. The next thing coming up is on the bottom of your agenda. Where's mine? Which is August 4th is a walkthrough by the municipal building commissioners. It's at 4:30. It's an early hour. If you can attend, it's a good chance to, first of all, to show up and show how grateful you are for what the city's done. But second of all, you get a tour of what's been going on. There's an awful lot of stuff going on in this building. So I can't think of a better way to really take that all in than to show up at this meeting. You do not have to go to the Municipal Building Commission meeting, which will follow. They'll all toddle back to City Hall to carry on the rest of their business. But you're welcome to go to that if you wish. Anyway, So
What's the date on that again, Charlie?
the meeting, it's the Municipal Building Commission. That's an arm of city government.
Yeah, what's the date?
Oh, I'm sorry. The date is August 4th.
Which is a Wednesday.
Perfect, thank you. At 4:30?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And then the next board meeting will be in September. I don't have that calendar in front of me, but the usual Wednesday at the usual time, the 8th of September. Thank you.
Charlie, may I just ask, because we're not meeting until September, you mentioned in the course of this meeting, just wanting to make sure we provide some good support and affirmation for the staff at the library, particularly during this time when they've been working under some pretty intense circumstances. Are there any steps that we need to take to ensure that support or set that up? Or do we feel like there's adequate support being given now?
I just want you to be all aware of it. And if you have an opportunity to pop in and say something nice to our staff, give them a pat on the back, which is now allowable under the COVID rules. Go ahead and do that. I would like to organize something when everybody's back in the building again, maybe bring in some food or something like that. So
The Friends did do that. They sponsored something where I was cookies and fruit or something and provided that on a day when most of the staff would be in. So we have done that.
it's not a thing to try to undertake right now because they're all over the place and it's just chaos in there. So, but I will take it upon myself to make sure that we as trustees do that, and I'll let you know that we're doing it.
Great. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. Anything else, folks? All right. Well, stay cool and remember how hot it is in the library for the moment. And enjoy your summer vacation. I don't foresee the need to call an unscheduled meeting. We will have an additional warrant or two for the catch-up spending that will happen at the very end of the month. That's typical, and we'll vote that when we gather again in September. In September, I can see no reason why we shouldn't be meeting live in the trustees' room at the library. It should be nice and cool in there. For David and Cindy, the trustees' room is on the 4th floor, right in the kind of the northeast corner of the building, next to the literacy center. It's nice, comfortable surroundings, and it will be great to see you in person and not have to worry about mute buttons and, you know, two-dimensional trustees. And we'll be able to, you know, carry on as usual. I so look forward to that. I can't tell you how much. So with that in mind, we'll adjourn the meeting and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Stay healthy, stay cool, and have a good evening.
Okay.
You too.
Night.
Bye. Happy
Thank you,
summer.
Charlie. Have a good summer.
You
Good
too.
night.